This is the voice of the New York Football Giants, Bob Papa, and you are listening to the best throughout Europe, the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast.
Welcome back, Giants fans, to the latest edition of the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast. As always, we are proudly in association with Andy's Man Club. Lads, remember, it is okay to talk. Tonight, we are 100% British, but as always, we are still 100% Giants. And we're back to continue our roster state of play series. We're working our way through the defence. And tonight, it's linebackers and safeties that come under the spotlight. And joining me to look at those two positions in a bit more depth are Aaron and Craig. How are we doing, boys?
Yeah, really good. Trying to stay cool. Some defensive chat just in this slow period of the off season. Great to have some Giants football to talk about.
Are we sure it's a slow period in the off season? Because the last few days have been a bit mental. Can't really remember an off season where we've had such randomness hit us, and obviously we're going to get into one part of that a bit later. But like even what was it, Sunday, when all of a sudden Jalen Ramsey and Mika Fitzpatrick and all the other bloody players decided, Jonnu Smith, wasn't it? Decided to go everywhere. And I mean, that really set the precedence for the news that dropped yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely did. And I think we're all sort of, where did that come from? But, you know, it's something to talk about nonetheless. So I'm not complaining. You know, it was definitely unexpected. But I went ahead and picked him up in our Dynasty Fantasy Draft because why not?
Did indeed.
What have I got to lose apart from lots of points and pride? Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, lots to look forward to this evening. We'll talk about that one player. I'm sure everybody knows who he is anyway, but we'll talk about him anyway. It's like we're trying to avoid saying his name until we actually get to the point, but we'll get there. If you're watching live on YouTube or any other platforms, get involved in the comments. Send us your opinions and your thoughts on what we're chatting about. Don't forget as well, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. If you haven't, boo you. Feel free to leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice. But before we do get cracking, as we announced, as Aaron, 5 stars. Before we get cracking, as announced 2 weeks ago now, our first meet-up of the season alongside the guys from the New York Giants Fans UK is in the calendar. Sunday 26th of October at Belushi's London Bridge. So we take on our arch-rival Philadelphia Eagles. Kicking off at 4 p.m. We're looking forward to seeing as many Giants fans there as possible. More information on the venue can be found at belushis.com/London Bridge. We're all going to be there and we're all absolutely buzzing for it. And can't believe it's now less than 4 months away. So it'll come around soon. It'll come around quickly. I mean, I can't believe that next month we have football, which is madness. So it just goes to show this off-season, even though it's long, it goes very, very quickly. And before we know it, the football season will be upon us. So got that to look forward to in October. Obviously, it is Daylight Savings Day, so the clocks go back that day. Hence why it's 4 p.m. because the game's 5 p.m. kickoff. I mean, also, we could put it back to 3 p.m. and get an extra hour's drinking in if we want to bed. 4 p.m. 4 p.m. For a 5 o'clock kickoff. So get yourselves down to Belushi's at London Bridge. Plenty of hotels nearby. And we look forward to seeing as many of you there as possible. All right, then. It's news time. And I'm going to hand it over to Craig for this week's roundup. Over to you, mate.
Yeah, so I guess one piece of interesting news, one piece of not so interesting news, but worth noting, especially if people haven't seen, and especially for our American listeners who are the ones who are more likely to be able to benefit from this one. But we are now in July, and as Dan said, we have not meaningful football, but we have football next next month. Technically, Americans get football this month on July 31st, but because of the time difference, it's early hours of August 1st, so it doesn't count for us. But because we're in July, that means we are 3 weeks away from members of the public being able to get their first in-person glimpses at some of the newest Giants from the draft and free agency. 23rd of July, the Giants will welcome fans to the Quest Diagnostic Training Centre in East Rutherford. We have driven past that, Dan, many a time, to watch the Giants train. In total, there will be 11 practices that are free for the public to attend. However, fans will have to register. Season ticket holders can claim their tickets from 2 p.m. Eastern Time next Tuesday. That's July the 8th. And then the general public can reserve tickets at the same time, 2 p.m. Eastern, on Thursday, July 10th. The total list of dates for the practices in July are Wednesday, July 23rd, Thursday, July 24th, Friday, July 25th, Sunday, July 27th, which is the designated back together weekend. So I assume there will be some kind of special activities there. Monday, July 28th, Tuesday, July 29th, and Thursday, July 31st. And then in August, you have Friday, August 1st, Saturday, August the 2nd, Monday, August the 4th, a little bit of a break. And then the final public practice will be on Wednesday, August 13th, which is the joint practice with those noisy neighbours, the Jets. So quite a lot of information there. Obviously, if you go on to Giants.com, all the information is on there. We've just tried to sort of rattle through it quite quickly, but you'll get a lot more information there, including what they're going to be doing. I know that there'll be some signings going on, probably different players each day, especially legends. In other news, let's talk about Darren Waller.
I'm sorry. Who? I thought he retired.
Well, yeah, he left the Giants and retired from football last off-season after a disappointing 2023 season to pursue a rap career that, if anyone hasn't watched the music video, I mean, yeah, let's not go into that. He's now back in the NFL and has been traded to the Miami Dolphins. So as Tom Pelissero, who reported the trade first, the Giants are receiving a 2026 sixth round selection from the Dolphins in exchange for Waller and a 2027 conditional 7th round pick, which is one of the odder trades that are out there. Waller has signed a $5 million one-year deal with the Dolphins, but will still count for $4.9 million on the dead cap this season, which is the second highest behind Daniel Jones's hit of $22 million. Both those players will be off the cap next year, so no dead cap hits next year as it stands. However, we do have cut down day still to come this offseason, so you never know. Aaron, none of us saw it coming. I genuinely don't think any of us dreamt it, had nightmares about it, foresaw it in tea leaves, anything like that. But what was your immediate reaction to the trade and what the Giants were able to get, and then obviously Waller's return to the league?
Yeah, so you're telling me we can have a 6th round draft pick for a guy that's retired? Is that money for nothing? Like, literally, like, how? Now, obviously, you know, Miami, for a rapper, there's quite a rap scene down in Miami. Maybe it adds to his cred. Maybe that's why he's coming back to, you know, to play. I mean, I think there was some recent interview of him speaking about how he knew it was time for him to retire when he was put on a lead block on a counter play, and he was like, "Yeah, I need to retire. I need to get out of the NFL." And he goes to Miami. You know, I don't think that they quite use the counter in the same way, and they're not quite a heavy offense. So yeah, I think he could. We saw that Miami have a need for tight end. Waller at his peak, I think, could have a lot of fun in that offense. With Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle were the primary targets last season. The scheme got found out a little bit, and they kind of resorted to running in Jonnu Smith. If they can have that third threat with in the passing game, and maybe they can go back to a more advanced scheme and that kind of thing. So you might do all right. But I think it's good. It's a win for the Giants in any way.
Money for nothing is probably the best way to put that. And obviously, you look at the $5 million deal. That probably means that he's almost nailed on to make the roster. And you look at their backup tight ends now, and he's probably nailed on to make the roster. Obviously, Jonnu Smith going to the Steelers was probably one of the dominoes that caused them to look elsewhere. I mean, of all the tight ends technically contracted to the Giants, I'm surprised that maybe they didn't have a little preliminary poke at Bellinger there. I think that one could have potentially made sense, but they obviously went for what was the cheapest option in the terms of trade capital, because I'm sure we could probably get higher than a sixth for Danny B right now. But Dan, Waller struggled with us. He's been out of the league for a year. James has said odds on for Waller to the Pro Bowl this year. I'm sure it's very thin. Do you actually? I know you've already alluded to the fact that you picked him up in fantasy football in our dynasty draft. Do you think he does anything more than average this year?
For my fantasy football team, absolutely. I hope he balls out and makes it to the Pro Bowl, and and nabs me 1,000 receiving yards, 10 touchdowns. Come on, Darren Waller. But in
the realistic world,
being realistic, I mean, when you think about Miami's weapons, like I said, Aaron, you've got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Who else have they got? So it's like he does add something to their offense, I suppose. The tight ends room is a who's who of nobodies. I mean, and now obviously him being in there, he's a proven pass catcher, he's a proven difference maker, especially in the red zone. But he didn't have a great year with us, but our offense was dog shit, so I'm not surprised. But then looking at Miami's offense, well, their offense isn't that great either, considering all things considered. And Tua, he's a concussion away from retirement, so. Who knows with that Miami team? But money for nothing, Aaron. That literally is like the Dire Straits song just comes to my head when you say that. But it is like we've got a 6th round pick for essentially for nothing, because he wasn't on our roster. Yeah, he was contracted to us. Yeah, we were paying him money this year, whatever. But
another reason why he might be back in the league is because chicks aren't free. If he's got his alimony to pay, he might need that extra $5 million tax-free down in Miami in the no state income tax from Florida. So that could be a reason why. And just explain to the listeners how confident you are with Darren Waller. What round in the dynasty draft did you take him?
I believe it was round 20. Round 20. I think it was the 13th pick in the 20th round. Yeah. And the dynasty draft that lasted for almost 2 months, I will add.
Yeah.
I kind of miss it already.
So if you go to ourlads.com, which by the way is a very, very good site for looking at depth charts, they're not always 100%, but they do update it monthly, so it's a very valuable tool. They've put Darren Waller straight in as tight end 1, in front of, and brace yourself for these big names:
who's nobodies?
Pharaoh Brown, Julian Hill, Tanner Connor, Jalen Conyers, and Hayden Ruckey.
Are they all respawns on Madden?
Yeah, they're all what do you call it? Regens.
Yeah. But so I think obviously this happened the day after the Minkah Fitzpatrick and Jonnu Smith trade. And I think on that trade, I kind of fancied the Miami side of that trade. I actually have now corrected that statement. I fancy the Giants side of that trade, because that made Miami desperate for a tight end.
Yeah. Yes, that's very true. Very true.
I mean, how desperate must you be to pick up a player that's been retired for a year and go, let's pay you $5 million to come out of retirement? Come on. Reeks of desperation. But not complaining.
Before we get into linebackers, there is an important question in the comments here.
Okay.
Mayo, explain your jersey when you can. It looks like it says Northampton, which is where I am.
Yeah,
Cobblers.
so I did a long distance degree out of Northampton University about 10 years ago. And the only time I ever went to the campus was to take part in their American football team. So during that period, for about a 6-year period, the Northampton Nemesis were a thing. And this was my jersey for when I played for Northampton. So I got colours for the university for playing in a Bucks sport in the first team. And yeah, we were kind of a mediocre team in the kind of the middle division of Bucks University football. But yeah, the only time I ever went to campus was for graduation and for 4 years of playing American football. So yeah, I was also team offensive MVP as an offensive lineman. I think one game we had.
Wow, the offense has got to be shit.
Yeah, I had over we had over 300 yards rushing. Mostly behind me playing at guard, and I then there's a photo of me blocking a defensive lineman out of the back of the end zone on a goal line run. So I managed to drive him all the way through the end zone and out the back. So yeah,
Impressive.
yeah, it was
picture needed for next week, I think.
Yeah. Absolutely, the Northampton Nemesis. Ooh,
Northampton Nemesis, scary. Yeah. We so the Knights were set up by some of the coaches that were at Northampton a number of years later, which is they're in the adult senior league, but the Nemesis were the university team in that time frame. So, but yeah, sadly, I think the size of the campus and things, it wasn't. I don't think they're still running now. They're certainly not in the Bucks league anyway. So yeah, sadly, went the way of the dodo.
Well, there you go. Hopefully that answers your question, Holly. Yeah. Is that the news done? That's the news done, isn't it?
It is. It is.
No more news. Cool. Okay. All right then. Let's look at linebacker, shall we? Because why not? That's why we're here. Aaron's going to kick it off this week with our main man. Yeah.
So Bobby Okereke, as announced as a future Hall of Famer by in the third round of the 2019 draft by Pat McAfee.
Hold it right there. Say that name again.
So, as announced as a future Hall of Famer by Pat McAfee as Bobby Okereke. Go and watch the video.
So it's Pat McAfee's fault.
Yeah. And it's phonetically on the card. That's how he decides to do it. Now, he was having fun because obviously that draft was in Nashville, right? So a Colts player coming out to announce a player in Nashville. He was making fun of the crowd, wanted to make sure that they knew that this guy was going to be a future Hall of Famer, Bobby Okereke.
I actually genuinely have like a weird memory of remembering him say it like that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not getting his name wrong. I'm just quoting Pat McAfee. Facts.
Thanks, Pat.
It's his third season with the Giants this year after signing a 4-year, $40 million contract. He's a cap number of 14.4 million for the year, and there was some trade talk coming into this kind of season around the draft time that maybe he was a trade candidate. But without a major addition at the position, I think we can end all talk of Bobby O playing in Jersey, playing in Jersey in a jersey other than the blue of New York Giants. So he was ranked 12th out of qualified linebackers by PFF in 2024, and he comes into the season with a top 8 ranking from PFF. He played in 12 games in 2024 before being shut down with a herniated disc for the remainder of the season, and he played. One thing that we've seen from him in his 2 years with the Giants is very consistent play. He's ranked at 73 rating from PFF in all of those seasons. He set career highs in his first season in kind of sacks and tackles. I think he had 150 tackles in his first season, and he was on pace to match that last year. So he's come in and he has really set a standard. He maybe plays a bit more coverage than maybe some of the classic blitzing middle linebackers that you may know from the league. But he's involved in every play. The feedback from coaches is he's a leader. He's everything you want that kind of middle linebacker to be. And kind of where my question is, Craig, with the upgrades that we've had in our secondary and D line, does this give Bobby O the opportunity to make the Pro Bowl this season?
Yeah, I think so. Because if you look back at last season when we were talking about Bobby and how much he was struggling towards the beginning of the season, getting used to Shane Bowen's defense, he was saying that he was trying to play for the other players on the team and not for himself. Like, it didn't feel like a second nature to him. And obviously we started poorly once again with defensive lapses, and obviously we saw different players regress and other players struggle. Obviously, he didn't have Micah next to him in that first game either, because he missed the first game. I think it was with a hip injury. So he had a brand new sort of green as grass rookie, Darius Musow, who obviously we're going to talk about in a bit as well. So I do think that he was playing shackled because he was too worried to make a mistake, not just for himself, but for the team, knowing how much it would affect. So I think we will see the Bobby O that we saw in the first year that we had him under Wink Martindale, where not only was he a tackling machine, but he was consistent. He was one of the top performers, and he looked like he was having fun while doing it. I think that's a key thing whenever it comes to certain players, is that they need to enjoy what they're doing. And Bobby just didn't look like he was enjoying it at the beginning of last season. Despite that, he still put up good numbers. Considering he finished the final 5 games on the sidelines, to still have, I think it was like 98 tackles, something like that, for the entire season. That's incredible, and that's kind of what you want. You want your linebackers and your safeties to be your leading tacklers, and what an episode to talk about that. But yeah, I do think he does have an opportunity because he has the tangibles to be able to do it.
Bobby Okereke, Pro Bowler?
Bobby Okereke or Bobby Okereke? Yeah, I've got to agree with Craig. It absolutely does. His second season in Shane Bowen's scheme, I think being fully recovered from the injury that he didn't require surgery on as well is a big thing. And I think having those upgrades on the line and in the secondary, kind of, it might take the pressure off of him a little bit. He is kind of like he is the leader of that defense. He is the Mike linebacker, and so maybe sort of felt a bit of, quite a bit of pressure on his shoulders to make a difference. Obviously, Dex is there as well, I know, but now that sort of we'll go into obviously the secondary in a bit, but now we've got those upgrades and better players in those positions. I definitely think he's got every chance of making the Pro Bowl. We saw 2023 like ultra consistency across the entire season. Played every single snap with McKinney as well, and I think this year could be that sort of year for him again. Like a couple of injuries last season, obviously ended his season early, but I don't see why not. Like Craig said, he's got the tangibles to do it. And you can tell he enjoys playing football. You could tell he enjoyed playing in Wink's system, and I think now in the second year of Shane Bowen's system, I think he'll start to shine again. I really do. Alrighty, Micah McFadden next, I believe. There we go. Now, Micah, I think the beautiful thing about Micah McFadden is, he's in his contract. He's going into his contract year, and so far, the beautiful thing about him is I think he's we'll all agree he's exceeded expectations. I think 5th round in 2022 out of Indiana. He's the defensive MVP in Indiana as well. While he was there, he's only missed 3 games in the first 3 years due to injury. Which, when you think about it, for an inside linebacker to only miss 3 games across 3 years for injury is pretty damn good. And having Bobby O to play alongside and someone to learn from and almost kind of like a role model for him, he's just played consistently well. I wouldn't say there's been glimpses where he's shone. There's been some times where he's not been so great, but across the 3 seasons he has been consistent. He's probably one of the standouts of the 2022 draft class. We all know there's some real, dare I call them, busts of the 2022 draft class. Evan Neal, what? So he has, and to come in the 5th round with low expectations really, and do what he's done. I think he's done really well. Looking at last season, he was the 98th ranked linebacker according to PFF. His pass rush grade was in the top 10 of all qualifying linebackers. So he's fantastic in those formations. But when you look at his pass coverage, that's where he struggles, especially like nickel and dime packages that are sort of coverage heavy. Like that sort of the quickness he has to sort of move laterally that isn't really there. But that's something that potentially could be developed. And he's still young. He's only 25 years old, so he can still learn. Quickness maybe not so, but just being clever and being smart and knowing where to play, to sort of place yourself like in a formation and to not necessarily bite too early. Just to watch the play, read the play, watch it sort of play out, and then make a move rather than initially see the ball, get the ball. And his angles can sometimes be a bit not great, so there's room for improvement definitely with him. But he's alongside Bobby O, they've kind of made quite a good tandem. One sort of like fills in for the other where the other's not doing so well, and they kind of make a nice tandem together. And looking at sort of potential long term, obviously with Bobby O, obviously he's going to be due a lot of money next season, obviously. But then McFadden is in a contract year, so it's kind of a case of, do we give McFadden a new contract and let Bobby go, and then look to Micah as a sort of potential for linebacker 1, or do we? There's so many variables, but I think with this being a contract year for Micah, do you trust him to take that next step this year, or do you think he's close to his ceiling where he is now?
It's really difficult. I think that as much as he's done the right things, I think you would be amiss to think that a lot of people would trust him to be linebacker 1. And I do think that, there are things that he doesn't do that Bobby does, like Bobby has the green dot. Would Micah be able to do that as well? Would he be able to do it at all? Is it something he's comfortable doing? Do the coaches trust him to relay the plays to the rest of the defense without knowing if he's ever done it? Which I don't believe I've noticed him ever be mentioned in training camp as having the green dot. I think it's always been Bobby. I think Pinnock did it last year as well. It's a difficult one. Like you say, he's kind of in English footballing terms, you would call him a terrier. Like, he's one of those players that just wants to, like a bulldog, like just wants to get in people's faces. He's quite happy to do the nitty gritty kind of dirty stuff. But would you say he excels at anything? Is he a jack of all trades rather than being a master of something? And I don't think he really excels enough at one point to say that he can take a next step sort of thing. And he could surprise me. That's totally fair. But I just don't know. I think he's good, but could we get someone better?
Polty, like a Vinnie Jones.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. I mean, he was a bit more than a terrier, but he was just downright violent.
Mastiff, wasn't he?
Yeah, literally. Yeah, he was just downright violent. But yeah, it's a great point. You know, would you trust him as LB1 mayor or Aaron or mayor or whatever I'm going to call you? Would you trust him as LB1, or would you look to bring someone else in if Bobby O wasn't there?
So I think, and maybe I'll take this on a little bit of a tangent, and we'll come back to it. So
We love a tangent.
All right,
Yeah.
Shane. Jesus.
go on an adventure. It's like a lineman downfield on a pulling.
Are you eligible? That's the question.
I am definitely not eligible.
Get back.
So I think what we've seen from Michael McFadden, and he's not the only fifth-round pick on our roster that has proved it. This is why vets get cut and rookies get jobs, because particularly at low-value positions like linebacker and running back. So the level of play we've had out of Michael McFadden, the level of play that Tyrone Tracy gave us last year, shows why you don't put the big contracts on people at that position unless they give you something really extra or you're really close to a Super Bowl. And I think, do we think we can't get Micah McFadden's play out of a player in the draft? There is a question of it. I think Bobby O's money, all his guaranteed money is basically up now. So I think you can look at, cutting Bobby O and playing Micah McFadden for less money, potentially, depending on what he'll sign for and all those kind of things. I think the partnership's really good together. I think that's the reason why you look to bring him back and keep that partnership going. The interesting thing is, scheme-wise this year, we've got players that are more multiple that we might want to get on the field. There's a guy I get to talk about a bit later that might be the reason why we play with less linebackers on the field. There's also a guy in the new draft pick in 51 that may have some time at middle linebacker and cause us to be multiple and those kind of things. So I think you may see his role change slightly, assuming everyone's healthy and how we use Michael McFadden on the field. But I think that just means that where his limitations are, you can avoid using him in those things and make him more effective in those kind of blitz packages, the first down 10 kind of where we know we've got to defend run and pass, and so he's more of a run defender first and then pass coverage and these kind of things. So I think there's those kind of things that we can use him for in the right packages, and I think you'll see him as a package player rather than an every down player this year.
Tangent complete. Are you back on the line?
Well, hopefully I got back there to Micah McFadden, and specifically we went on all about fifth round draft picks and veterans. So hopefully you didn't even notice that I went the back way rather than the highway.
That's what she said. No, yeah. It's, again, that's a great point you make. Do we utilize him in sort of a rotation with some of the other guys on the roster, in situations where we can utilize him to his strength, it's a very, very good question. We'll see what happens in camp, no doubt. Craig, the last two, not last two, but the next two.
The next two, the double header again for the second week in a row. I think this is. I've taken the duo up next, should we say? Two players that potentially, I guess, could be looking at McFadden in the last year of his deal and thinking, I could make a name for myself here. Darius Musau and third player Deontay Johnson, a.k.a. Shane's boy.
Shane's boy.
Now, Musau appeared in 15 games in his rookie year last year, missing only week 2 with a knee injury and week 10 with a hamstring injury, that being the game in Munich, so didn't want to take the risk on bringing him over to Germany for that. Across the season, he had 435 snaps across 13 games on defense, because he did have a few on special teams where he didn't appear on defense at all. He recorded 3 pressures, 39 tackles, 14 of those solo, 2 tackles for loss, and a single interception, which not only was one of only a few interceptions the Giants had last year, but was also an interception during his first game as a pro in those delightful red and blues. And probably the only good thing about that jersey really was watching Musal getting an interception, because there wasn't really anything else that happened during that game that was good. Deontay Johnson spent all of 2023 on the practice squad, but got an opportunity during the 2024 preseason. He impressed massively, especially in that preseason game against the Lions, to the point where we all said that he was a lock for the roster that year. He then got an ankle injury during that game, and unfortunately for both him and Shane's prediction record, didn't see the field again until week 17, when he appeared in special teams, and then he was used as a rotational linebacker in week 18, leading the defense with 11 total tackles during that game. So despite the fact that he'd missed so much time, he was showing the same stuff that we saw during the preseason in that final game, where a lot of players could have quite easily been on the beach, given up. We did see a lot of these lesser rostered players further down the depth chart really show up during that game. Obviously, it was a loss to the Eagles, but we definitely saw some good performances, and Deontay Johnson was one of those, and kind of, we held him in good stead for this year. Obviously, he's signed a 1-year deal to be back with the Giants this year. He was an exclusive rights free agent, so there was always the chance that he was going to sign it anyway. Dan, with the pads going on later this month, both are likely to have a fair crack at Micah McFadden's starting role, especially Deontay Johnson, who had a great camp this year. Is this the only starting spot on the roster where you could say it is up for grabs? I know we've just hyped up Micah McFadden for the last 5 minutes, but could you quite easily argue that his spot's up for grabs as well?
Yeah, I think if you look at the rest of the roster, there's only, we spoke about it a couple of weeks ago, Aaron, but there's only the only roles that really on the roster that aren't necessarily locked in at the moment is on the offensive line. So I think, yeah, I don't see why, whether or not the starting role is under threat, I don't know, but definitely use them as apologies if you can hear that motorbike. Definitely use them as more of in a rotation. But they both look really good. Musal impressed last season. I think was it up until week 12 or 13 he had our only interception of the season. And for a rookie, and he was drafted 6th round, I believe. Maybe 6th round. He was late round anyway. He came in and he did a job when he needed to. He filled in for Bobby O when he needed to. He filled in for Michael when he needed to, when they were injured. And I think Johnson as well, he impressed so much in that game against Detroit. And then it was such a shame that he missed essentially the entire season because of his ankle injury. And then he comes out, and was it week 18? He led week 18 or week 17, one of the two. He led the defense in total tackles, and it's almost well, that's his potential. That's what he can do. So I definitely think the chance of one of them taking over from Micah is there. Whether or not they do or not remains a question, because they are still both developmental. They still both need a bit more development than Micah needs anyway. But look, you use them as a way, like a 3-headed backup monster behind Bobby O, and just have them rotate between them, and it might even take the pressure off of Bobby as well, but you'd want to see him on the field for every single snap. So, yeah, quite possibly is my answer.
Going to call an audible here for Aaron. If Bobby O went down and we had to move either one of these two or Micah to linebacker 1, do you still believe that we would be okay at linebacker?
Yes, 51. So I think again, I think the biggest challenge for these guys getting on the field is this: someone's got to give to get Kayvon, Burns, and Carter on the field at the same time, and you know, we've seen already from OTAs, we've seen him line up as one of the middle linebackers. Won't be all the time. They'll move him around. May even line up at D tackle and things like this, or one of the other guys lines up at D tackle and he lines up at end and these kind of things. Johnson, I think, has the potential to be that diamond in the rough, like Victor Cruz story, where he looked amazing preseason, got hurt all the season on IR, comes back next preseason, amazing again, walks straight into the team, and we know Victor Cruz's story from there, right? So could we have found a one at linebacker? Quite possibly. And you know, you've got to remember how young some of these guys are when they come out of university, and you know, not everyone gets it at 21 or 23, and sometimes it clicks a bit later in the thing, and so you do get some of these guys that go, you know what, I get it now. I know why. You know, maybe they were a bit slow. They were an athlete and they were a bit slower on the mental side of the game. Suddenly they get a better coaching. They're full time. They don't have to worry about anything else. They're focused on football, and suddenly it clicks. And maybe that's what we're seeing here. So I wouldn't rule it out. And I think preseason and camp will be a big part for it. Musau, I think. Solid backup, special teamer. I think that's his role. Will play in when he needs to. But I think, for me, I think this. I don't think necessarily these two are the reasons why that his role, Michael McFadden's role, is under threat as a star. But I think the whole scheme and everything else. I think it, and the fact that we've got maybe 13 guys or 14 guys that you want to play in those 11 positions with some rotation mixed in there. There are 2 positions next week, Dan, though, that are up for grabs, and we'll leave that as a cliffhanger for next week.
We did ask the chat as well. Is Michael McFadden's starting position under threat? Holty said, like Mayo said, the linebacker position is always up for change unless you're on the top of your game all the time. And Chris agrees, it could be under threat. And I don't think that by saying his position is under threat is a bad representation of Michael McFadden. It's just a representation that we have some quite good depth there, and a lot of them are young. So you could quite easily see somebody just take a better step. And that's not to say that Michael McFadden then falls off the face of the earth. He could still be a very good rotational piece for us or for another team.
Exactly that. Yeah, I agree. It's an interesting position, that inside the middle linebacker. We've got 3 more on the roster. Chris Board, Ty Summers, and this is a fantastic name, Demetrius Flanagan Fowles. Sounds like he's out of like one of these period dramas, doesn't it? Looking at those 3, it's kind of tough to see where they fit in apart from pure backup. I think that's where they're going to be. But we normally carry 5 linebackers on the roster. So it opens a spot for one of them. All 3 have over 1,000 snaps on special teams. So, Aaron, who are you tipping to get on the roster?
Yeah, so I think Chris Board's a no-brainer for his special teams. He's come in as that special teams X factor guy. He's if you have seen the recent trip round the car park with the positional coaches, when when the special teams coach was asked to introduce us to the new guys, first name out of his mouth was Chris Board, and I think that tells you all you need to know about his kind of roster status. He's one of these sought after veteran savvy specialists that come in for, a bit like we had Isaiah Simmons kind of filling that for us the last couple of years. Chris Board's that guy. And I think regardless of whether you see him in the defensive rotation, and again, maybe we don't need that fifth linebacker in the defensive rotation straight off the bat because of the previous conversation. But I think Chris Board's like a nailed on special team slot. And that's what kind of having that flexibility with your starters allows you to do it. It lets you carry a few guys that have specialist roles, and rather than having to try and fit a backup into a specialist role, you can have a guy come in and be a specialist player.
Greg, do you agree?
Yeah, Chris Board was going to be my choice out of the three as well. I think he's had over, I've got it here, 2,510 special team snaps in his career since 2018, including over 1,000 snaps on defense as well. He averages probably around, other than 2023 when he was solely used by New England as a special teamer. He's with Baltimore last year, 3 years ago, Detroit. Before that, he spent 4 years with Baltimore where he was drafted. He played 1,000 snaps on defense between those, but then you're looking at least 80% almost on special teams there. And I think the other thing to bear in mind is that the Giants special team coaching staff are not afraid to pick up the more experienced player. If you look at Matthew Adams last year, who was barely used in the actual defensive rotation, but was always used pretty much. I think he was one of the highest snap contributors on special teams last year, is they trust these savvy guys, because you do tend to get a lot of the younger players playing on special teams. So you need these kind of anchor players. And I think Chris Board is one of those. And, to go from, Baltimore to New England, Detroit, Baltimore again, especially sort of further down in his career, and contribute like he has done, it's just a no-brainer for the Giants. We've had Carter Coughlin do it in previous seasons, but this is the kind of thing where I could quite easily see, Musau and Deontay Johnson contribute, but Board will be the sort of steward at that position across the entire season, health permitting, obviously.
Yeah, it's like, and you've got to look at his contract as well. 2 year, $6 million contract. I think that speaks volumes. They clearly see value in him, and so for special teams play alone, and obviously if he can contribute on defense, even better. So yeah, I think the other two are destined for practice squad. But yeah, Chris Board, I definitely think will be that fifth one on the roster. So I'd be very surprised if it was, the only way it's not going to be him is because of injury, and touch wood that doesn't happen. All right then, linebackers in the book. Let's move on to safeties. Craig, new boy, you're up first.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, this, because I was started to do my research on Javon Holland. And obviously, he's a new player to us. He's a new player to the Giants. We obviously knew who he was from the Dolphins, because he's been a very, very good player since he was drafted in 2021. But as I was kind of looking through the articles, I just kept seeing stuff like the most overlooked safety in the league, an X factor, a bounce back candidate, somebody who will have a much better 2025 than 2024. And they're not just coming from like the unofficial beat writers, or from fan magazines and stuff. These are coming from like PFF and PFN and from NFL media analysts as well. Like, a lot of people are looking at Javon Holland as really having that kind of bounce back year with the Giants. And the Giants will kind of be banking on it to be true. You know, they gave him a 3-year, 45.3 million deal. 30.3 of that is guaranteed. So it's a lot of money to throw at a player in a position that, 12 to 18 months ago, we didn't value the position back then, but we obviously do now. Joe Schoen, we've spoken a lot about Joe Schoen and how he's obviously trying to right the wrongs of what happened with McKinney, but his value only makes him the 12th highest paid safety in the league based on overall contract value. And if you actually look at it, McKinney is 6th with an overall contract value of 67 million. So he has replaced him, but obviously not with a player that maybe excites as much, but also not with a player that is as expensive. Now, if you look back at his time with the Dolphins, you can see why the Giants were very keen to get him. And obviously, when we did get him, we all said that we thought we got him for less than what he would go for. And maybe that was just his market. But in his first 3 years, he recorded 5 interceptions, 4 forced fumbles, 4 fumble recoveries, and 21 pass breakups. Now, last year, he did have a down year, no interceptions, 4 passes defended. He had 1 sack, 62 total tackles. But that Dolphins defense last year was poor. And that wasn't just him, that was across the board. There are a lot of players who have generally impressed on that Dolphins team that really did not last year. So, Aaron, with Joe Schoen seeing his mistake in letting McKinney walk in 2024, he's obviously rectified it with this. How important was it to go out and get a player of this caliber after seeing what a cheaper option in Pinnock put up?
Yeah, I think we obviously saw last season how good of a player X was and kind of helped because of how good and everything else he was. We got that compensatory pick in the draft because of kind of the value of the contract and everything else. So factor in the fact that we've got a 3rd round draft pick out of this, which effectively allowed us to be used to get our QB of the future. I think you need to factor that into the into the decision and take on also our roster and our cap situations in a completely different spot. When you've got your franchise QB not on a rookie contract, you have to go and look at where you can save some money. We now don't have our franchise QB on a long-term contract. They're on a rookie contract or they're on a low-value contract. It allows us to spend a bit of cash in these positions. So I think that's one of the driving factors. I think if you listen to what some of the people said as well, he wasn't the first option for the big money. It was Will Fries, and we were priced out of that position at guard. I think, yeah, it's the next obvious spot to go and spend that money. We saw how the secondary suffered in the scheme. Maybe we didn't have the right scheme fit for the new DC, so we brought a guy in. I mean, the guy's 36th overall, and we brought him in. He's on less money than what we were paying X. I think I'm hoping that is the real big fix. I mean, if you want to hear more from him, he's got his Breaking House Rules podcast. I think his recent episode talks about his first month on the Giants as well. So you can go and hear what it's like to be a 4th-year player in the NFL and some of the stories that come out of there. Not always all football chat on there, but a nice insight to see. And yeah, I think that was the secondary was where we need to upgrade our defense. This, along with the improvement with Paulson Adebo at corner, and then the addition of Abdul Carr on the defensive line. Everyone's talking about the Giants' defense as one of the potential top units in the league, which is, a fantastic place to be, and it comes from that confidence you get on the secondary, which Javon Holland is going to be a big part of that.
Dan, do you think that Joe Schoen saw the McKinney as a mistake and obviously then pulled in Holland and went for that bigger player, or do you think it was more because of how bad Pinnock was last year?
Probably a bit of both, to be honest. I think he knew, like, obviously when he let McKinney go, we've spoken about that decision a lot. But like Aaron said, you've got a franchise quarterback tied up on a long-term contract, and it's like you're gonna have to cut corners elsewhere. And unfortunately, like, we were priced out of McKinney deal, and he went off to Green Bay, which I don't blame him. And look at the performance he put in last season. You know, leader on that defense from day one, interception after interception after interception, and it was just almost like, ah, crap, I wish we had McKinney back. You know, Pinnock was mediocre. You didn't necessarily sort of put any sort of fear into the opposing offense, and he was, let's say, he was okay. You know, he was mediocre at best. And I think now with Holland on board, I think he's definitely rectified a mistake that he made, and I think that he did. He saw that he knew that he made the mistake in letting him go, but he probably knows the mistake in letting Barkley go as well. You know, and that was probably just a bigger mistake as letting X go. But I think the fact, you know, Javon Holland, he's shown he's amongst the best safeties in the league. He offers that sort of same type of, like, all around sort of playmaking ability that X did. You know, and I think he fits into Shane Bowen's scheme really nicely, and, you know, different coverages. And I'm so freaking excited to see what this guy can do on our defense, and be a leader in that secondary that is very, very young, very young. And, you know, and the fact that we've signed him for less money than we were going to pay X, I mean, it's a win-win, right? It's a win-win. So
The nice thing about it as well is when you go back and you watch our post-season pods where we first started talking about potential players, I was banging the table for Javon Holland early. Yeah. And it's just nice for us to be able to actually pick up a player that you genuinely want. Like, obviously, Aaron knows what that's like with the drafting of 44, but
whoa. Did your laptop move then by mistake, or what happened there?
I did tell Craig before the podcast that this desk is on its last legs, and any unexpected movement could cause a collapse.
Was it movement from underneath?
Let's not go there again.
Sorry.
Let's not go there again.
Sorry.
Dan, I think Tyler Newbin's up next, isn't he?
Is he? I don't know. Yeah, he is. Sorry. Completely ruined your point there, what you're making. Yeah, Tyler Newbin. Sophomore season, Tyler Newbin. I think you'd be wrong to say, or wrong to think, should I say, that Tyler Newbin didn't have a pretty solid first season in the league. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't outstanding. It was just solid. And I think the fact that he was the first safety taken in the draft last year, I think he done pretty well. He finished 71st ranked safety overall by PFF. It put him bang average in terms of impact made by rookie safeties. He did really well in run defense, playing physical, not being afraid to drop into the box when he was needed to either. You know, the fact that he had those 13 career interceptions in Minnesota, you know, he sort of had that sort of ball hawk definition coming out of college, especially like zone coverage as well. But he struggles in man situations, and I think that lets him down. He's really, really versatile, and he's flexible to play over the top or in the box as well. But I think what we've seen from him in year one is enough to say we've got somebody here that we can develop into just as good a safety as Javon Holland. I think he could be really, really good. And year two, with Javon Holland alongside him, world's your oyster. I'm excited to see what he can do this year. But I'll come to you first, Craig. Do you think he lived up to expectations in his rookie season, or do you think he fell short as he was the first safety selected in the draft?
It's so difficult, isn't it? Like he came out and everyone was going, he's a ball hawk. We're going to get loads of interceptions from this guy. He's a ball hawk. And we got 0. But the team was so poor. Is it a reflection of him or is it a reflection of scheme? And then you think about, okay, well, he was starting to get going, starting to sort of really start to understand and show that he was getting to grips with taking that step from being a college player to a pro, and then he gets injured and obviously has the ankle sprain that required the tightrope surgery. So it was gutting for him, because if there's anything that can come out of the sort of season that we had last year and obviously the year before, it's that towards the end, you can start to temper your expectations to the point of trying to find those players who have that special something. And obviously Nubin has that, and that's a reason we pivoted to him in the draft when obviously we wanted to take Lassiter before the Texans took him. But I think you almost say to him, he didn't live up to expectations, but he also didn't fall short. He just kind of sat bang average. And that's not a knock on him. It's just the way that the expectations happened and the way that the season played out was that he just kind of existed.
Yeah, very true. Aaron?
Yeah, I think very difficult situation for a rookie to come into last season. New defense, learning a new scheme, so even the vets are on a bit of a back foot. Not an experienced secondary at all by any stretch last season. So, and I think maybe one of the benefits of Javon Holland is you are bringing a player with a few more experience into that backfield. Played a lot of kind of strong safety, that box safety, and maybe you didn't have this kind of coverage reps that you would expect. I have no concern about Tyler Nubin and I don't think we've seen his full potential yet. And I think we talked about positions being up for grabs. Yeah, this isn't one of them. So no dramas with Tyler Nubin for me.
Yeah, I mean, he done what he needs to in his rookie season on a defense that struggled. So, the only way is up really for him, and I think he'll have a great second season. Well, hopefully he'll have a great second season anyway. Aaron, over to you then for the next one.
Yeah, so Dane Belton. So fourth season in the NFL after being drafted in the 4th round, 114th overall out of Iowa. He's appeared in 49 games, but only starting 13. I don't think there's a question about him making the 53-man roster. He's carved out a very good start to his career as a reliable backup, but with potential to be a rotational piece and starter upside. I think from a 4th round, this goes back to that same comment about why rookies make teams instead of vets who arguably may be better when rookies are cheaper and you get this kind of play out of a rookie. This is a guy that you probably could attach the ball hawk tag to. So he's technically co-led the team in 2 of his 3 seasons. Despite that part-time, he's not been a starter or anything like that. When I say technically, it's a little bit less impressive when you realize those marks were 2 interceptions and 1 interception. He tied first last season with 1 interception. So ball hawk maybe, but he's certainly also got the fumble recoveries as well. He has been a guy that has provided a little bit of spark on a defense that struggled at times. it's that kind of the fact that he's led the team as a part-time player is probably a knock on some of the other players. I think apart from maybe X, because he had more interceptions in 23 than Belton has in his career. So let's just maybe not. I don't want to trash X purely on that. He has been building his reputation in OTAs. He's had at least 3 confirmed picks, 2 pick sixes from the open practices with media. I think Giants have also reported that he's got at least 1 other. And then with the Holland signing, I think there was some kind of thought that he might be the odd man out in the rotation and that kind of thing. And to pick up on the point earlier, I guess, is Shane Bowen has been quoted saying that we've got to find a way of getting the guy on the field, and he's he's been really good for us early in the spring, and this whole concept of getting your best 11 guys on the field, regardless of their kind of position. If we've got a logjam at the end, we've got a logjam at safety, and this is kind of this also. So I didn't pick up on it earlier when we were talking about Carter having potential to come in and play linebacker or play if the opposing team's in nickel and dime. I wouldn't be surprised to see the potential of all 3 of the guys on the field, and then that helps you with that coverage. Could play that cover 3 that's come back in a little bit of vogue in the league, and then let your pass rushers down the front. Keep it all in front of you and let them get home. So I think it'll be really interesting. And based on that kind of question, Dan, we have this 3-headed monster at edge. That's the headache on how you get more on the field. Do you agree in the fact that, particularly with his ball hawk skills as well, has Dane Belton made a case for a 3-headed monster at safety?
I think without a doubt he's definitely in contention. Just looking at his spring workout performances, you'd be wrong to not put him in the mix. And like Shane Bowen said, you've got to find a way to get him on the field. If he's one of your best players, you've got to get him on the field. So I can absolutely see him being in there. Whether it's as a starter or not is another question. I don't know, because would he come out in front of Nubin and Holland? Probably not, mate. But there's always a chance. But I can absolutely see him being part of that rotation. He'll no doubt contribute as well on special teams too. So yeah, I'm all for it. It's good to have that sort of depth at a position where we've had struggles. Well, had a struggle last season with Pinnock. He was just sort of nothing great happened last season with him. So it's and I think having Holland there as sort of as a linchpin will sort of only help Belton and Nubin just to improve their all-round game as well. So yeah, I can see him being used definitely.
And maybe not a 3-headed monster, Craig, but a guy that's going to earn some more snap shares, especially when you've got a guy that might be a magnet for balls.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely one thing that we have seen is that he has an interception in him. Let's put it that way. But also, and I haven't even looked into the stats on this. It's just something that's popped into my head. But it always seems to be an important interception. I don't know if that's just me, but I just have this kind of perception that whenever there's a fumble recovery or an interception by Dane Belton, it's at a key moment in a game, and it's at a moment where we could potentially turn the game, or it's against a big opposition. Like he lives for those big games and those big moments, and it does feel harsh when you look at his stats and you see 13 starts, especially when you look at what we had last year. And I get the idea of, okay, you've got the rookie Nubin in there. We'll put Pinnock next to him just because of the fact that he's a bit more established. He's been on multiple teams. He'll be able to help him through. And I'm going to go off on a little tangent here. But if
All
you
right, Shane.
look at if you look at, and it's just based off something that Chris said, where he said, with our schedule, I'd expect to see a lot of rotation with players. And I'm just going to expand on that and say, I don't just think it's our schedule. I think for the first time in 4 years with Joe Shane as a general manager, we have the depth to rotate players. We have the depth to turn around and say, this player is not playing well and having a bit of a shocker here. We need to switch this up now. And it'd be nice if we see Shane Bowen and I guess White Kafka, who potentially is our OC until we are told otherwise. It would be nice for them both to kind of maybe show a little bit of balls and turn around and go, you know what, I am going to change this because we need to be better. We can't just accept mediocrity like we have done in the past. Maybe, and yeah, our schedule's a shit show. We know our schedule's a shit show. But maybe if we get to a point where we actually win a couple of games in those first few weeks, we can look at it and go, we have something to play for here. We don't just roll over. We bring players in. And players like Belton is the sort of one who you could say will maybe come in for a few, but could quite easily start a game with a different look, and then we can rotate the players around just because there is a bit more there than what we've had in previous years.
Yeah, and I think that is the true difference with this year's roster. And you can look and say, well, there's not a lot of maybe competition at starting positions. And a lot of this, again, offense, a lot of the starters are coming back, and it's going to be, largely the same starters. But the competition to be in the 53 this year, that's the difference. Is it's not it. There are genuine players that aren't going to make this roster, or at least the initial 53-man roster, and you think, how's that guy not made it? And I don't think we've had that in previous seasons. And I think that
we haven't had that for a long time.
I think that is maybe, Shane's taken some really big criticism around his roster decisions and this, that, and the other. But, we were in a cap position that was not good. He sorted that out. Yet the only way to sort that out is to spend less money on players, which genuinely means you're not getting as good a quality player. Now we're kind of out of that cap hell. We've got a bit more flexibility, and we're now building some depth to our roster. We may not be a team that competes. We may not see that in the record this year because of the schedule and opponents that we've got. But I think, peeling back the onion a little bit, instead of just looking at the record and going, oh, the Giants are a terrible team again, I think there are signs that we'll be able to point at during the season, and probably a good news for people that get to talk about the Giants for a couple of hours every week. There are going to be things that we can point at that show improvement on this roster, I hope. Now, if we don't, I promise that one of those classic blow-ups, there will be a blow-up about Shane Bowen's defense at some point if we don't see it from me. I promise you.
Yeah, I think as well, you think we said earlier, 22 million of that dead cap this year is for Daniel Jones. Once that 22 million comes back, it's almost like we've got a bit more money to spend on other players, because we're in the beautiful position of having a rookie quarterback. So it could get better from here. You never know. Craig, round out the rest then.
Yeah, the depth behind the first three consists of Johnson Jr., seventh rounder in his third year, who saw limited special teams and defensive snaps in 2024 with the Giants. Raheem Lane, who's was a UDFA in his third year with the team, under 200 total special team snaps. And then undrafted rookie free agent Makari Page, who is a prototypical safety but has no pro experience. My original question here that I wrote down in advance of this episode was, do you see this as a potential depth worry or an opportunity to find a diamond in the rough? But after talking about the first three, and after talking about earlier about linebacker, and where we said, well, actually, if your team at the first level, second level, and third level are good enough, you don't need to worry about depth here. Aaron, do you think this is maybe an opportunity to roster somebody like Makari Page, who is prototypical, to give him those valuable, like 53-man roster snaps rather than being on the practice squad, above someone like Anthony Johnson Jr. and Raheem Lame, who are both in their third year and are bit part players?
Yeah, I think typically 4 safeties is probably what you keep on a roster. So I think you're probably looking at the one that you can't afford, or you don't want to risk losing, because obviously the 53-man roster, you get the protection. I would expect to see one of the other ones on the practice squad as that kind of elevation player that you can get there. Again, always look at vets at cut down day. Is there someone that they can bring in that's a reliable vet and this kind of thing? But yeah, I think of the 3, that's the guy that you might be worried someone else tries to sign to a roster. And again, if he shows out at all in any of the preseason games, given that there's now very limited time in those preseason games, that's the sort of guy that you go, oh, I don't want to risk him being picked up on waivers and missing the opportunity to sign him to the practice squad. That's the kind of guy you would keep.
Dan, I was literally just looking up Makari Page's roster spot. Roster spot. I just read roster spot. Contract details. And as a undrafted free agent, he signed a 3-year, $2.98 million contract, which included $165,000 guaranteed. Undrafted free agents don't tend to get guaranteed money unless other teams are looking at them. So do you agree with what Aaron's saying there, in the fact of, do we take the risk on a player here because of the prototypical size, but also because there is the risk of losing him elsewhere?
Absolutely, yeah. I think I'd be very surprised if Makari Page didn't make the roster, in all honesty, based on that, the fact that we've given him some guaranteed money. I wouldn't necessarily rule it out that he won't make the roster. It all depends on, looking at other sort of other camps as well, monitoring who's being cut, where they, and what the situation at safety is like on other teams as well. So, should these 3 sort of not pan out and not do as well as they would like during camp and during preseason, there's potentially looking at an option of bringing in somebody else from another team, or picking someone off a practice squad, but yeah, I think Makari Page, to me, said, I think they obviously see something in him that they don't want to necessarily let go of, and they don't want to risk other teams picking up on. So yeah, I think he'll make the roster. I definitely do. But yeah, don't get me wrong, the other 2 as well, I think they're versatile enough as well, and they're obviously they've both been with the team before, so that they're known to the team. They know what they're capable of. So it makes for an interesting battle for that kind of one spot between the 3 of them, doesn't it? So yeah, nice. All right, safeties done, linebackers done. There's only 2 positions left now, boys. And that's coming next week, because unfortunately that is all we've got time for tonight. We'll be back next Wednesday, usual time, to close out the series as we bring back, as we look at cornerbacks and our special teamers as well. So they'll be under the microscope next week. So make sure you tune in then. Is there anything else to add before we go, guys?
So, little Easter egg for the listeners: if they rewind back to the start, or check the socials and at the poster for the event. Now, we thought the first time we met was in Munich, but go and have a look in that poster and look for Dan, Shane, and Kev in there, and have a look who stood right in front of them. It's a little one for people to go and have a look at the poster for. And when you find it, leave a little comment on the video, share it on socials, and comment what you've noticed in that picture.
I mean, you could quite easily find me like Ashley Cole in that Roma picture across on the other side, miles away from the rest of the group. Yeah, always a good one. Always a good one. I like these kind of episodes because at one point I looked at the time and obviously we'd flown through linebackers a little bit. And then as we kind of get into the sort of latter half sometime of these episodes, we tend to go off on little tangents and find extra little bits that just organically work because of the conversations that have come before. So I do really like looking at this roster, and I do think that maybe we need a Shane here to bring us back down to earth, because we do get a little over optimistic sometimes, and we are talking about the New York Giants. You know, we know what we're getting into, but you know, we've got some interesting weeks coming up. Obviously, we're about 4 weeks away from our preseason preview, where we can look at the games coming up. We've still got another 3 weeks until we get to that, and we've got a couple of weeks until training camp. But we've got some interesting stuff coming up, so obviously make sure you continue to tune in.
Yeah, man, it's this whole series diving through the whole roster so far has been very, very good. It's been very enjoyable, and there's definitely been some tangents, put it that way. It's always good having those in there, because you know we love a curveball every now and again. But yeah, we definitely need a Shane to bring us back down to earth and just ground us a little bit, so we don't get too carried away with the hype and the expectation of this, because like you said, it's the New York Giants. So maybe we need to temper our expectations just a little bit, because anything can happen, right? Anything can happen. Yeah, lots to look forward to over the next few weeks before pre-season starts. So like Craig said, make sure you tune in next week and the following weeks as well, and on past that too. Check out all of our just give up at the season, it's fine, don't need to tune in during the season. Check out our socials for all of the latest news. Follow the links in the description to find where we're at, and give this episode a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, like I said at the beginning, and hit the bell for when we're to be notified on when we're going live. As Aaron's just said there, 5. Yeah, don't forget the 5-star review. If you feel free to give us some love and some appreciation. And thanks to everyone for getting involved in the comments this evening. Appreciate you watching, and appreciate you giving us your opinions and your thoughts too. My thanks as ever go to Aaron and to Craig for joining me. We're signing off until next time. Let's go Giants.